Hey everyone, welcome to my show, Lights Up Bay Area. This is the vodcast where you can tune in to see what's happening and playing around local Bay Area theaters. If you don't know me, my name is Raisa. I'm a theater maker here in Oakland, and I am so excited to get this party started. I wanted to kick off this series with a show that I just saw over the weekend. To me, this play, I actually had no expectations whatsoever. The only thing that kind of like was a little bit scary or nervous for me was the culture difference, because this show is about 5 Muslim women who go to Mecca on a pilgrimage to fulfill a family's last wish. I'm not super familiar with the Islamic religion. What I found was that I actually have a lot more in common with the characters of this story than I actually ever thought of. Each of these characters has their own goal to reach. I don't want to tell you too much because I feel like it's a lot more fun going into a show, not knowing what to expect, and just kind of uncovering as you are listening to how the story unfolds. But I'll tell you this, these characters and the way that they were written, the way that the dialogue was written, it gives you so much in so little time. Now, there are a few things that I really wanted to highlight about the overall craftsmanship of the show. And the first thing that I really have to talk about is the directing. For those of you that want to know, at least this part, spoiler alert, the theater is in the round. So when you go in, if you've ever been to Z Space's Steindler stage before, it is massive. It is essentially like a giant warehouse that's been converted into a theater space. The ceiling is so high that it makes you kind of wonder, what are we in for? But as you walk through, you realize, oh, this is a very minimal set. We have 5 poles, we have a white floor with a circle in the middle, and all the audience kind of creates the 4 walls of what we're going to experience. Now, I love theater in the round because for me as an actor, as a director, as a writer, I'm always curious about what visually are we going to see? What are we going to hear? What are we going to experience? Because theater in the round kind of takes away all of the magic and the hoopla and the sleight of hand and everything that can hide things. It makes theater making so much more vulnerable, especially as an actor, because everyone gets to see you in a 360-degree perspective. You almost have to be on the entire time that you're on stage, just because at any moment someone could be looking at you, and kind of wondering, why are you standing there like that? Why is it intentional in that way, right? The director, Michelle Talgarow, has done such an amazing job putting this story together and translating it to the stage. The mixture of minimalism and maximalism. Minimalism in the sense that we don't have a lot of props. We don't have a lot of set pieces. We don't have too many things that kind of cloud the mind and kind of make you think and go into other places. No, you are looking, you are seeing, you are actively listening to the story, because that is what you have to focus on. And what I really love about a minimal version of this story is that I get to create the picture in my mind of what this airport looks like. I get to picture what travel looks like. I get to picture, what does that line going into the mosque look like? And I have to say, the compliments of the sound designed by James Ard really put us there from scene to scene. I have to talk about sound now that I've just mentioned it. And the thing that I love when people are storytelling is just like the soundscape, right? We don't have a lot of people in this production. It is 5 women who are on at all times. And I'm kind of wondering, like, how do you create the space of an airport? How do you create like the feeling of like being trampled? How does that like even work? And I think the beauty of what sound does is it creates those like those connections to memory that we have of, like, you know, maybe a crowded airport on a Friday night or a Friday morning when everybody's trying to get out for Labor Day weekend. And you know that it's going to be busy like that. Or you know on a bus what that sounds like when there's, you know, people who are hot, or the air conditioner's busted, or what does that like trip actually sound like? And I thought that it was so cleverly done without taking too much from the acting, because then it was the acting that supplemented the beautiful soundscape that created the world that we were co-living in with the actors. Let me rephrase that. We are co-living with the characters. Now, I talked about co-living with the characters, and it just brought up to my mind about how brilliant this directing is, and why, you know, Theater in the Round, and why Z Space's Steindler stage was, everything was so intentional to me. But what I thought of when I was like watching this show was, I feel like I am in this piece, but as a bystander, kind of, or an outsider looking in, like listening into those conversations, trying to understand like what's going on with these women, and why are they acting the way that they're acting. And it's reminiscent of when I travel and, you know, I see somebody, like, let's say at Disneyland, and then, you know, you have a family who's like bickering in line, and you're kind of like tuning in and listening to what's the drama, why, what's going on, even though there's like a sea of people all around and crossing. So I kind of felt like that as well, that I was somebody who was actively paying attention to the story that was going on, and intrigued, like 100% intrigued. And there were moments where I nudged my fiance, I looked over and be like, oh my gosh, that's good. and I really enjoyed that kind of like being an active participant, but as a viewer. So I talked a little bit about sound. I talked about directing. I do want to talk a bit about the set, because to me the set tells a lot of the story, and especially because, so back in the day we had these like mosque projects for like AP World History, and we had to create kind of like what we would make our mosque to look like. And I remember that circles played such an important role in the Islamic religion. Because that circle was on stage, it brought me back to like the reasoning behind it, and made me want to Google again, like, why? What is the significance? And it turns out that, and I'm just going to read this out here. So the circles symbolize unity, infinity, and the eternal nature of Allah. It also represents the center of the universe, with Mecca as its focal point. And oh my gosh, I don't want to give it away, but you'll see when you go see the show why that circle also plays a key role in kind of like the staging of like where the characters are going in the story, and why it's all like so very important. Again, with the minimal design, the actors were only working with 5 benches. that had like wheels on them that they could pick up themselves, they can maneuver and then place. And I want to highlight that like the movement was so intentional that it felt spiritual. And I really, really enjoyed that. And Michelle is very good at making sure that there's a lot of intention in those details. And yeah, one of the things that I really enjoyed, and this is also going to be a big shout out to lighting design by Ray Oppenheimer, is that there's a scene where they're in their hotel room. They had the 5 benches that doubled as beds, and the lighting just kind of shone on whose room was active at that time and who was speaking. And then when the next person would talk or the next room would be active, then the lighting would change. But the beautiful thing, and again, using theater in the round, the actors were still on as their characters. And you know, like if we moved on from Noor and Miriam, who's the mom and daughter, and then they moved on to the sister's room, the mom and daughter would still be doing something like either sleeping or packing their clothes away. And I thought that was so interesting because everybody was still on. And also like their emotions or whatever that conversation like left off with, it was still carrying throughout that story. So it felt very much like we were getting a lot more information from acting, even when they're inactive, than just dialogue and storytelling in that way, which I thought was like so beautiful. I felt like to kind of continue to tell the story and continue with time, but also give you a deeper understanding of each character, the costuming was like so pivotal in those moments. So I'm just going to give you a little tidbit because this is something that I really want folks to pay attention to if they don't normally pay attention to costuming. But one of the characters, so San, who is the youngest of the 5 women, she kind of has like her own, like I want to say like a rebellious or artistic and free kind of nature, and doesn't really quite like take her religion as seriously as her other sister Nadia, and but she goes through kind of a transformation in costume and to get like a deeper and closer understanding to, you know, not just like the religion itself or like the reason for this pilgrimage, but also like a connection with her family. So I want you guys to just like pay attention to kind of like her costuming journey, even the way that she wears her hijab. It's so telling. It's such rich storytelling through wardrobe, and I gotta give a big shout out to Fatima for that wonderful piece of storytelling through fabric. So of course the show wouldn't be anywhere without this talented ensemble, and each of them have such a pivotal role and give you so much for so little time and with only what you're given, but they give you so much. And I want to give a shout out to Nora El Samahi, Janae Simon, Isabel Alamin, Fatima Mehraban, and Leda Rasuli for their fantastic ensemble work, because you would think that these people like knew each other forever and ever and ever because the connection was so strong. The way that they like spoke in their dialogue and how they were just so on top of each other or gave each other breaths, it was musical. It was something that like I love to see in theater. So again, wanted to give a shout out to the ensemble and Michelle Talgarow and the amazing work that she does in ensemble building. I have seen this I have seen this time and time again, especially on the show that I worked with her on, which was Man of God at Shotgun Players, and the way that she brings actors together to become a part of a team, and not just, no, I'm sorry, it's not just the actors, it's also the crew, because even as being someone behind the scenes, I was actively a person who was in there and feeling and experiencing and ideating and creating with them. So that like beautiful co-creation and teamwork, that's theater. That is theater right there. In theater, we only get one shot at it. Every night we only get one shot to get it right, and even if it doesn't go right, it's still beautiful and it's still magical, because there is always something to appreciate about like the humanity and the willingness to try your darn hardest with the potential to fail and still getting a fantastic outcome. And also just, wow, the way that theater like affects people too, in a way that makes them reflect about their life or other people's lives, or how do we become better people. I think theater has the power to do that. I want to keep going on and on about this show. It is such a delight, and I would love to watch it again, and I highly encourage other folks to go out and see it, because it is a beautiful, masterful piece of theater, and it is just a little snippet of what the Bay Area has to offer as far as like theater and creativity and everything that we do out here, that we need to keep sharing it and keep sharing it with other folks, especially those who are not usual theater goers. So I'm going to leave you guys with one last huge shout out, and that is to the writers, Humaira and Bridgette, who did such an amazing job with this play. And I really want everybody to go out and see it. The dialogue is sharp, it's witty, it's relevant. They only have 4 shows left. They'll be running Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I believe Thursday, Friday, and Saturday are 8 p.m. shows, and Sunday is their closing matinee. Go out and see it, fill those seats, have some conversations, and come back to my channel and type in the comments what you thought. My name is Raisa, and this is the very first episode of Lights Up Bay Area. I hope you like it, and I'll see you again real soon.